What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are discussing Minnesota ahead of the 2025 season. Before we get started, if you like this content, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment. All that helps a lot getting this in front of more people as we try to grow the channel ahead of the season. We're going to be covering team previews all off season. Eventually, we'll get into win totals, conference futures, stuff like that before we head into actual game breakdowns in the regular season. So that's the plan. Until we get there, let's talk about Minnesota. Here is what we saw last year in terms of efficiency metrics. It might be a little surprising if you didn't watch a lot of Minnesota games. This team was 37th in total offense, 25th in total defense. Only real place they struggled, and it's not even a struggle, they were above average, is pass blocking in 76th. But this team honestly put together a solid body of work, which isn't always evidenced in the 8-5 record. That 8-5 record doesn't tell the full story. They actually went out and had competitive games, good wins against USC, UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, Wisconsin, Virginia Tech. Those are quality teams. Of their 5 losses, they lost 4 of them by single digits. North Carolina, they should have won that game in the opener. They lost to Michigan, Rutgers, and Penn State by single digits. This game was hyper competitive in all of those contests. The only game that got out of hand was Iowa. They lose 31-14. So that's how you get to these efficiency metrics when you're playing essentially single-digit wins, coin flip games against Michigan, Penn State, and some of these elite teams on your schedule. That's how you get to some of the elite efficiency metrics, which makes sense. And PJ Fleck has been a good coach for this team. He's now in his 9th season, took the job in 2017, 56-39 total record. A lot of people have their qualms with PJ Fleck. I've had them at times as well. But you have to realize this guy's only missed a bowl twice. His first season when he took over a rebuild, and then the COVID season where they played limited games because of some of the regulations. Bowl game in every other season. 8 wins last year. They were in position to win more. That's a reasonable criticism. It's been a good tenure for PJ Fleck. He retains offensive coordinator Greg Harbaugh Jr. They do list co-OC Matt Simon. They've put together a lot of offensive plans for differing personnel, which I think is a feather in their cap. In 2023, they only passed 39.7% of the time. Last year, they passed 52% of the time. So whatever's on their roster, they're capable of putting together game plans for whatever their strengths and deficiencies are. They'll run the ball nonstop. We've seen them be pass heavy more than once. This is a good offensive staff, and they've put together solid efficiency multiple times, even with deficiencies. DC, they lose Corey Heatherman to Miami. That's a big loss. Co-DC Nick Monroe is still back, and then they promoted Danny Collins from safeties coach. So they do keep the continuity on defense. Heatherman was awesome, so hopefully they can get even a large percentage of what he offered the team. That would be solid for them as they head into 2025. Here is their talent and retention. Acquisition is not always great for Minnesota. It's a hard place to recruit. Go on to the Twin Cities. It's not always ideal. You play in the cold. You play outdoors. A lot of people don't like it. It's not a hotbed for recruiting. So no surprise, they're 48th, 35th, and 45th the last 3 seasons. One thing we can say is their retention's good. 90% in 24 and 68% in 23. That is good. And they do recruit a few 4-stars here and there. Going back to some talented players like Rashad Bateman, they had Coy Parrish last year. Ariante Ursary was a big draft pick for this team. It's just not as deep as some other teams in the Big Ten is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, they're a development team, and when they acquire talent, they're keeping it. Here is what we see on their roster this year. This is the 2 deep. Basically, we are trying to project everyone that might play snaps this year, or at least who's most likely. Transfers, excuse me there, didn't mean to switch to Georgia Tech, was trying to scroll over. Anyway, transfers are in yellow. We have the year they are in school, followed by the amount of snaps they played the last 2 years, what recruit they are in terms of star, and then a value score, which basically looks at your recruiting first and foremost. Then the more snaps you play, the less it looks at recruiting. The more it looks at on-field play, just trying to capture how good a player actually is on the field, which brings us to quarterback. They did not add anybody. Max Brosmer is gone. Presumably, Drake Lindsey's going to play, the redshirt freshman. He's all hype at this point, but everything looks like he's going to start. 6'5", 230. only 5 pass attempts to his name. He was the 873rd recruit in 2024, and he's a pure pocket passer. He actually finished high school with negative rushing yards. So not expecting that to change as he heads into Minnesota's quarterback room. Behind him, not much depth. Dylan Whitkey, he's a dual threat redshirt sophomore. They add Emmett Moorhead from Boston College and Old Dominion. He's a veteran. 4-star freshman Jackson Collick is with the program. Excluding Moorhead, who they added in the spring, this QB room had 5 career pass attempts, and Moorhead is not a real candidate to play. There's certainly talent with this group. It's young and it's unproven. And Lindsey not being a good recruit, at least an elite recruit, let's say that, he is a good player. That was the wrong way to say that. That's how you get to this 50.5 ranking. You're just dealing with a player who's not super highly recruited, no experience. You get a dice roll here. The one thing I'll say is they can hide it. We've seen them throw the ball 39% of the time. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the approach they take, or at least early in the season as he tries to get his legs under him. But coming out of spring, it's all hype with Lindsey. People are optimistic he's going to be the answer at QB. And again, this team is no stranger to having to hide quarterbacks. Think back to the Ethan Kaliak-Manis years. Running back, they have a stud, 4-star Darius Taylor. This is another reason why you could potentially bring Lindsey along slowly. You have Darius Taylor, who's a workhorse. He's been injured a few times, but last year played almost every game. 6 feet, 215 pounds, rushed for 986 yards. That was 4.8 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns. But although they passed more, he was a focal point, 54 catches. He's the team's leading receiver in terms of returners. And he had an awesome freshman season too, almost 800 yards in just 6 games. Elite efficiency metrics. Last year, 798 of his yards came after contact, 46 missed tackles, forced, 27 yards of 10 plus, 15 yards of 15 plus. I mean, he's an elite back. They lost almost all their depth pieces. So they go to the portal. They add AJ Turner from Marshall, Cam Davis from Washington, and Johan Cardenas from Vanderbilt. Cardenas probably not going to play much. He didn't get any snaps as a redshirt freshman, so we'll see about him. He is 6 feet, 223. But Turner should play some as a change of pace, 6 feet, 195. Last year, he had 864 rushing yards on 8.3 yards per carry. Davis is a little more of a grinder, 6 feet, 214, only 44 rushes last year. Best season came in 22, where he had 525 yards. That's 4.8 yards per carry and 13 scores. A little bit of a bigger back, so perhaps plays as a change of pace on early downs when needed. They also have Fame Adejoboy, who's back after 2 snaps last year. Don't think we really see much of him. It's probably going to be Taylor on most snaps, followed by transfers Marshall and Davis rounding it out. It's still a very good running back room, and it was always going to be as long as Taylor stays healthy. Wide receiver, they lose their top 2 pass catchers, Daniel Jackson and Elijah Spencer. We mentioned their leading returning receiver is Darius Taylor, funny enough, with 350 yards. But their top returning wide receiver is 3-star Lameek Brockington, 6 feet, 195, caught 18 passes last year for 272 yards. Perimeter receiver, but his yards per route was poor. 0.74 is not great. Playing behind Jackson, Spencer, Taylor, it makes sense, I guess. But he'll be their leader of the incumbents. However, they may not need him. They go out and add Logan Loya from UCLA, Javon Tracy from Miami, Ohio, and Malachi Coleman from Nebraska. Loya battled injuries last year. He's 6 feet, 185, caught 59 passes for 654 yards and 23. He's mainly a slot receiver, 1.68 yards per route through his career. He's jumped above that in certain areas, but injuries have limited him. He should start probably in the slot. Tracy is 6 feet, 206, caught 57 passes for 818 yards, played in the slot 57% of the time, but more than capable of splitting out wide. Over 2 yards per route for him, too. Finally, Coleman, he was with Nebraska last year. He's a former 4-star. He did not play, and you have to go back to 23 to get playing time with him. 8 catches, 139 yards. Played out wide 95% of the time, which makes sense. He's 6'5", 210. Not great as a freshman, but he's had time to develop. Minnesota's been good with some reclamation projects, so we'll see what we can get out of Coleman. They also have some interesting depth pieces, a 4-star freshman in Bradley Martino, a former 4-star in Christian Driver, Apparently, he was recruited based on his name alone because he's been very bad since he got to college, previously with Penn State, then with Michigan. Just can't get on the field. And in the bowl game, they were playing Donnell Hayes and Kendrick Lanier ahead of Christian Driver. So I think the more interesting names at this point are Hayes and Lanier if one of these young players is going to step up. It is probably slightly weaker overall, but I hesitate to say that because there are some players with talent here. We might be able to get something out of the receiver position. Tight end. We lose Nick Callerup, but they return Jamison Gears. 6'5", 255. He was an awesome tight end for this team last year. 4th on the team in receiving, just behind Darius Taylor, 290 yards, well above average in blocking. Gears is going to play a lot and probably be close to an every down player. But Minnesota will run a fair amount of 12 personnel, especially if they decide to take a run-heavier approach. A couple candidates to play alongside him. Drew Bieber from Purdue transfers in. He's 6'5", 245. Played in a rotation last year. He was an awful blocker who caught 13 passes. That offense was a disaster, so perhaps he can grow. They also have Frank Bierman. Decent blocker, which I guess suits the offense more if you're playing 12, but he's a former JUCO guy. Honestly, I think they might get beat out by some 2024 3-stars who are deeper cuts. Julian Johnson, Jacob Simpson, they're just more talented on paper than what we have out of Bieber and Frank Bierman. So we'll see. Offensive line. Lost 3 starters, including stud tackle Ariante Ursary. They have moved players around a little bit. Ashton Beers is back. He played guard last year, but they're moving him to center. He was a little weak as a pass blocker, allowed 17 pressures, but strong run blocker, above average overall. He's your new center after playing guard, which is interesting because they're taking returning starter center, Greg Johnson, and he's moving to guard. So they're basically flipping positions for these two guys. Johnson was a little better than Beers in terms of pass blocking, only allowed 18 pressures, but played far more snaps. He trailed a little bit in the run game, but he has over 1,200 snaps of experience to his name. So these two give you a good foundation at guard and center. The other guard position up for grabs, I would say transfer Marcellus Marshall from UCF is the leading candidate. He is a 3-year starter, one of those with Kent State, 2 with UCF. Not great as a run blocker, but definitely above average as a pass blocker. Only allowed 12 pressures last year. His main competition will come in the form of Purdue transfer Jaden Ball or redshirt sophomore 4-star Jerome Williams, who's yet to play. Tony Nelson had 102 snaps last year. He was the bowl game starter. Any of these guys could see snaps at guard, but I would tentatively pencil in Marcellus Marshall as the favorite. Tackle is probably going to be a little weaker than guard this year. They bring in a couple transfers, Dylan Ray from Kentucky, Kali Tafai from Washington. Starting with Ray, he started the last 2 years with Kentucky, but that came at guard, so now he'll presumably be kicking out. Good as a run blocker, decent as a pass blocker. Overall, he was about average in the SEC. Tafai was awful. 286 snaps. He had to start 4 games due to injury, and he was catastrophic. So I think you're hoping Tafai has more depth, or your coaching staff, you really believe in him that much to sort of rehabilitate this guy. I don't know. But they don't have to play him. Redshirt freshman 4-star Nathan Roy is still with the team. I want to see him as highly recruited as he is. And then they have Illumina Kelly from UTEP. He came over last year. Definitely weaker at tackle and largely just because of depth, but I think you want to see Dylan Ray and Nathan Roy as your top 2 options to maximize this unit if you can. Let's go to defense. Again, new DC, but some players you'll replace, some you'll retain. On the edge, they lose Danny Strigo and Ja Joyner. Top returners, Anthony Smith. He's a bit of an inside-out player. He's 285. Most of his snaps in his career have come from the edge rushing alignment, but last year he did play more inside. Still, he led the team with 32 pressures, good in run defense. He's a player you can use on the edge on early downs, kick inside on passing downs, very versatile player. Outside of him, it's a little bit weird. Lucas Finnessy, he's a 6-year player with 188 snaps. He played 160 last year. I'd rather not see him. Jackson Howard, 125 snaps, a former 4-star LSU transfer. He's someone that I think should play. And then they have Carter Menz, 23 snaps last year. He's also a redshirt sophomore, just not as highly recruited as Jackson Howard. They also had Stephen Curtis from Illinois State from the FCS to play the edge. Last year, he started with Illinois State, but only produced in the 57th percentile in the FCS. I don't think you want to see him if you can avoid it. Definitely a thinner group than last year, but Howard gives you some of the higher in talent. I think the defensive line on the edge will be a little worse than last year, all things considered. Inside, they do return Jalen Logan Redding and Devin Eastern. Redding, I flipped these names. Anyway, Jalen, we'll call him for now, with a hyphenated last name. Excuse me for mixing those names up. He pretty good across the board, 14 pressures, above average run defense numbers. He should be a solid place to start. And Eastern, he's more of your run stuffer at 310 pounds. Good pass rush numbers for him as well, which is 18 from a player at 310 pounds is solid. So Devin Eastern, Jalen Logan Redding, sorry for mixing that up again. Those are two good places to start at defensive tackle. They also go out and they add a couple transfers. Mo Amanode. Purdue did not have pronunciations on their roster, and he didn't play a ton, so excuse me there. Mo Amanode, he comes over from Purdue, started one game. Pretty good run defense numbers, but just a rotational player. Don't think he's going to jump ahead of Eastern or Logan Redding, but you never know. And then they also add Rashawn Lawrence from Stony Brook. He was an elite starter there, but he only weighs 270 pounds. Maybe he finds his way to the edge more, but it's kind of hard to jump from the FCS to the Big Ten as an undersized player. They also have a 4-star redshirt freshman in Riley Sunram, so that is a potentially decent player to use on the interior in rotation as well. The interior is stronger than the edge, but I still have some questions with the defensive line overall. Linebacker, they lost Cody Lindenberg, but injuries allowed more players to get work. Maverick Baranowski's back. Devin Williams is back. Baranowski has 755 snaps combined over the last 2 years. Would have played more if he hadn't been injured, but he is an excellent run defender. Struggles a little bit in coverage with a 75% completion percentage allowed. He still should be your lead linebacker. Devin Williams, he played 702 snaps in 23, only 388 last year. That was largely due to performance. He's been a little bit below average throughout his career, but he still is the second most experienced behind Cody Lindenberg. They do add a 4-star freshman in Emmanuel Carmo. They have a junior in Joey Gerlach, who's played a little bit. They also add transfer Jeff Roberson from Oklahoma State. He was third on that team with 58 tackles in his first season as a starter, 9 tackles for loss, but he did miss 11 tackles. That was 15%. Basically, I think you start with Baranowski and then you try to piece the rest of the room together with Williams or your transfer Roberson or your 4-star freshman Carmo. We'll see what they do, but there are options outside of Baranowski, which would keep this linebacker room pretty strong. Defensive back, they lose a lot, surprisingly. Ethan Robinson, Justin Wally, Jack Henderson are gone, but you'd be surprised how many players have actually gotten snaps for this team. The leading corner, at least on the boundary, looks like Zaquan Bryan, 266 snaps last year, started 3 games, including the bowl game. He only allowed 5 catches on 13 targets, and on those 13 targets, 2 PBUs and a pick. As long as you can extrapolate that further, he should start a corner. From there, they add John Nestor and Jalen Bowden in the portal. They're going to compete with incumbents Rylan Kelly and former TCU transfer Jayante McMillan. Nestor has a lot of hype. He played 121 snaps last year in 5 games. Originally was listed as a starter on the depth chart, but didn't end up living up to expectations. He'll get a crack at Minnesota's corner room here. Bowden is a 1-year starter in the FCS, was elite when he was out there, 8 PBUs, 1 INT, a 40% completion percentage in his coverage, just a big jump here. Rylan Kelly's only played 26 snaps. McMillan, he played 227 snaps, slightly below average last year, spent his first 3 years with TCU. So I think you're more likely to see a transfer over those 2 guys, but you never know. Safety and slot, Minnesota's typically playing 3 safeties at once, kicking 1 into the slot. All of these players, Coy Parrish, Kerry Brown, and Aiden Gooseby, have played a fair amount in the slot. So I think this is just going to depend game to game, play to play, alignments. We'll see. Among the 3 safeties, the top returner is sophomore 4-star Coy Parrish, 424 snaps. Parrish had 46 tackles and 5 picks on 18 targets last year. 56% completion percentage allowed. He plays special teams. They've been talking about dabbling on offense with him because he's so athletic. He's one of the highest recruits in the program. Coy Parrish is an absolute stud on the back end. Kerry Brown is back after 528 snaps last year. He was an elite run defender, finished third on the team in tackles with 63. Still allowed a 52% completion, 2 PBUs, 2 INTs. This is a good overall player. A little bit in the shadow of Parrish, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Finally, Aiden Gooseby, 435 snaps, good run defense numbers. His coverage numbers trailed a little bit, 69% completion, allowed 1 PBU, 1 pick. They do have a lot of depth. Darius Green is back. He's played 757 snaps in 3 seasons. Been a little below average, but if someone gets hurt, you have an experienced fourth safety on your team, which is never a bad thing. The secondary should be the strength of this defense. And with the edge group and linebacker room having at least a couple questions, this isn't a big surprise. Special teams and kicker, this is a huge question. They lose their starting kicker. They go out and add Brady Denneberg from Syracuse. He was benched after 5 games. Perfect on extra points, but only 3 of 6 on field goals. He's 13-22 on field goals in his career. The competition's not great either. David Kemp is still there. He originally kicked a little bit with Memphis in 21, hasn't done anything since. Sam Henson is a Concordia St. Paul transfer. I have no idea who's going to win this job, but there should not be a lot of optimism that this team remains the #1 special teams unit in the country. A lot of that's going to come down to, coverage units, return units, but kicking, I think, is going to trail a little bit for this team. We shall see. But let's look at what Minnesota faces this year before we move on. Talk about their schedule. Here we go. There it is. Buffalo, Northwestern State, and Cal to open the year. A road trip to Cal is not easy, but this is a good non-con for them. They should be 3-0. Gives you time to break in a new quarterback. Then they have a bye, an additional week, followed by Rutgers, which is not necessarily the most difficult team in the Big Ten. So you have a 5-week runway before you get into the meat of your schedule, and you travel to Ohio State, which was probably not going to be a win anyway, but it's at least worth mentioning. When you look at the schedule overall, they do play Oregon and Ohio State. Both those games are on the road. They'll be big underdogs in both. But they do dodge Penn State and Michigan. From the middle class, it's just Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. They do have 4 of the easier opponents in the Big Ten: Rutgers, Purdue, Michigan State, and Northwestern. They should be comfortable favorites in 7 games on the schedule. How they shake out against the middle class is going to decide a lot in whether this team wins 7 games or 10 games. Again, Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin are going to be the big decision points there. I think they'll be favored against Wisconsin at the least. And then you're not expected to beat Oregon or Ohio State. If you could pull off an upset there, it would be huge for this team. We've seen Fleck deal with schedules like this many times and come out as a bowl team, if not better. Did it last year at 8-5, which honestly could have been a better win-loss record. So, good team, decent schedule, workable schedule, should be a bowl team this year with a ceiling that maybe is a little higher. Double digits would be the ultimate ceiling for Minnesota, in my opinion. But thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again this weekend. Let me know who you want to see next in the comments. Until then, good luck. We'll see you next time.